All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video if you are on a laptop, desktop computer, something like that. Just trying to get my camera situated here. If you are on desktop, something like that's going to be to the right of the video. So I started with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So let me scroll down here to see who we'll be starting with. So I will be starting here with Floyd V. So if you happen to post your question more than an hour ago and you want to get your question answered, no worries. All you have to do is copy and paste your question in there, and then we'll get it answered later on in the office hours. The reason why I do that is I want to try to answer questions for people who I think are here waiting to see their question get answered. If you post your question last night or something like that, odds are you're not here waiting to see your question get answered. So without further ado here, we'll start here with Floyd V. So Floyd V says, hi Q, Clay's recent video on the secret to lag in the golf swing talked about impact using the last three fingers of the left hand to pull the club handle to vertical to generate club head speed. Can you review what each hand does at this point? So basically, the best way I can describe it is to imagine with your lead hand, it's like you're throwing a Frisbee, right? So if I were to be throwing a Frisbee toward the target, that's kind of the feeling that you're having with your lead hand. So you're getting, if you were to throw a Frisbee as hard as you could toward the target, right? You get the hands really, really low, and then you kind of pull up and let go with your hand. That's kind of what the release is of the club, and that's what Clay's talking about in there. You would hold that Frisbee like that, and you throw it like that. Now with your trail hand, it's a little bit different, right? It would be like you were throwing a rock. So you would have the hand right here, and then you'd be letting it go like that. So if you're going to be throwing a rock sidearm, that's the feeling that you want to have. That's the best way that I can describe it, is Frisbee with the lead hand, skipping a rock across the water with your trail hand. That's the feeling that you want to have with the hands. As far as exactly what the hands are doing, the lead wrist is going to be more in a bent back position in releasing and rolling. And the trail wrist is going to be more in a bent back position like this and releasing and rolling. That's what's happening with the hands. The pressure, most of the pressure is going to be in these first three fingers of the lead hand, because that is the point that's furthest away from this club head, from the mass of the club head. That's where the force is the highest. So that's where you're going to be needing to put in the most force into the handle. This is a fairly intuitive thing, actually. And you can, the best way I can describe this is to imagine you were holding the club like this, and just hold it as loosely as you possibly can and still be able to hold it. And then have your buddy pull on that club. Well, what are you going to do intuitively, right? You're going to put pressure into that club, and you're going to put more pressure right here in these first three fingers. You're going to do that intuitively. So that's what's happening in the golf swing. When you're swinging the club, you're putting more pressure into this lead hand, because that's where it's needed to be able to hold onto the club. So that's the best way I can describe it for you without getting into like crazy amount of detail, which is not what we're going to do in the office hours. If you want crazy detail on how the hands and the wrists are moving, I'd recommend checking out our crazy detail vault. We have 15, 20-minute videos on a specific, like what the wrist is doing and so on and so forth. So if you want to check that out, click the instruction tab, then click the vault categories, then click the crazy detail. We have one on the wrists, we have one on the elbows, one on the shoulders, the head, the hips, a lot of different parts, body parts, and what they're doing throughout the swing. And these are like 10, 15 crazy detail kind of videos. So Donald H says, I noticed that many pros and instructors put a lot of forward press on their putters. Would this cause topspin? Do you recommend forward press? If so, how much? So you will see some have some forward press. If you watch Phil Mickelson, he has quite a bit of forward press, and then he kind of holds that there. It doesn't cause topspin, because usually if you have a lot of forward press, you're going to have more loft on your putter. So basically what you want to have is you want to have just enough loft on your putter to lift the ball up out of the, because when the ball is on the green, you know, the green has grass on it, right? And the ball, if you look at it kind of like at a very close up level, right? Not necessarily a microscopic level, but a very, very close up level, you'll see that the ball is actually going to be sitting down in that grass a little bit. So we need the putter to have some loft on it, so that way it can lift the ball up out of it. But you don't want so much loft that you actually end up getting the ball to spin back. So you have to find that good amount of loft. Now, if you have more forward press, you're going to want more loft on your putter. If you have less forward press, you want to have your hands at least a little bit ahead of the putter head, so that way it's more stable. You want to have the force, which is your hands, leading the mass, which is the club head. You don't want to have the mass leading the force. When the force is leading the mass, you're going to have much more stability, whereas if it's the other way around, it's going to be unstable, right? So the best way I can describe that is, imagine I'm pulling this putter. This is the force leading the mass, right? Well, that putter is just going to go, that putter head, the mass there, is going to go right along in line with my hands. But if I do it the other way and I have the mass leading the force, that putter is going to be more predictable. It's not going to be as stable. It's going to want to go all over the place, right? So that's the same thing in the putting stroke. We want to have our hands ahead at least a little bit. If you have your hands ahead a lot, you want to have some loft on your putter, because you don't want to have negative loft on that. Because if you have a lot of forward press and you don't have loft on your putter, then what's going to end up happening is you're just going to be hitting the ball into the ground, and then it's going to bounce, and it's not going to roll very good, right? So Phil Mickelson, I'm pretty sure he plays a pretty large amount of loft on his putter with the amount of forward press that he has. He has quite a bit of loft on his putter, more than someone who would have their hands just a little bit ahead, because you don't want to hit the ball down into the turf, and you don't want to have too much loft. Like if you didn't have if you didn't have your hands too far ahead, right, you would want to have less loft on your putter, so that way it doesn't get backspin on it. So a good way to find the right loft for you is really just to get professionally fitted. If you go somewhere that uses like Sam Putt Lab or something like that, you can see things. One other thing that you can do, most of us have smartphones, and most of us have the slow motion video on the smartphone. Set up your phone to video the ball. Set it up kind of, so if you have your phone, you can kind of set it up to where it's like down here and have it video the ball, and you can see if the ball gets backspin on it. So what you want is, when you hit the ball, you want it to kind of have you want it to get up in the air a little bit, have no spin essentially. So it's kind of like knuckling a little bit, and then you want it to start rolling over end, over end, over end. Top spin, right? You want to start rolling forward. If you look on video and you see that your ball bounces into the turf, like you hit the ball and it hits down into the ground, then pops up, you're going to have trouble with speed control and getting it to roll on a good line, because the ball is starting to bounce right away. Especially if you have longer putts, it's going to start bouncing, and you're going to have a hard time with speed control and getting that ball to start on a good line. Now, if you see the ball get up in the air a lot and start tipping backwards, then again it's going to skid, right? And you're going to have trouble with speed control and with direction, which are the most important things for putting: speed control and direction. So, like I said, you want to have that ball kind of just get up out of the grass a little bit, knuckle through the air, and then start rolling over end, over end, over end. That's going to give you the truest roll. That's going to allow you to be able to control be much more consistent with your distance control and your direction control, which again, most important things for putting. So forward press, you have to have more loft. Less forward press, you have to have less loft. The only way to know for sure what you need is really just to get professionally fitted. You can do the test that I did there, or that I talked about with your video, to kind of see maybe if you're in the right place with it. Maybe you need to add more loft. Maybe you need less loft. It's pretty easy to take your putter to a club fitter and have them that they can just bend it a little bit to give you to give you more or less loft. It's a fairly simple procedure for them to do. So Joseph W says, hi Q, presently Florida after long northern winter. Any tips on getting into my golf skills up to speed as quickly as possible? Get to the range and start hitting balls. That's really just start playing. Get back to it. Get back in the swing of things. Have low expectations. It's not going to happen like that. You're not going to get in mid-season form in a couple days. There's no way to really speed it up. You just gotta get out there and do it. So Alan W says, I consistently hit behind the ball. What technique issues are most likely the cause of this? Typically, when I see people struggle with hitting behind the ball, hitting the ground before the golf ball, it's because they are either not loading up properly, loading up too late, and or not getting the shift to the lead side soon enough. So they're not getting the shift. The shift is too late, right? So what I mean by that is when you start, oftentimes when I see people, when I'm saying loaded up, I mean when they're maxing out the pressure that they're putting into their trail foot. Typically, when I see players struggle with ground contact, they max out that pressure at the top of the swing. The pressure is maxed out here, and then they throw their arms and they don't really shift their weight at all, and they just kind of they have what I would call a false weight shift, where it's really just the momentum of the club and the arms that's bringing them all the way around into a full finish, right? So what we want to do is we want to load up early. Even before this club starts going back, you want to start feeling pressure in your trail foot. And you actually want that pressure to be maxing out in this area of your backswing. And this area of your backswing is when you actually want to start shifting to your lead side. You want to shift your weight to your lead side before you reach the top of the swing. Now, for people who don't normally do this in their swing, this is almost like, rubbing your belly and tapping your head at the same time. So we have some drills that are going to help you to get you to start loading up sooner and properly, and then getting that shift to the lead side sooner and properly. So that way you can get that ground contact happening after the golf ball, get that ball first contact. So we have a series of drills that helps you with this. It's called our Stop Chunking and Topping course. I know you mentioned that you're chunking and not necessarily topping, but topping and chunking are really a product of the same issue. And that's from this club, the arc of this club bottoming out before the golf ball. The only difference is that when you top the ball, you typically, you're going to miss the ground and you're going to have the club work up into the golf ball. When you chunk the ball, you hit the ground and then the club works up into the golf ball, right? So they're a product of the same issue. I highly recommend you work through the drills in that course to get you loading up properly and then get you shifting your weight properly and at the right time. So to get to that course, this is a course that's included in your membership. It's one of the 20 plus courses that we have to fix about any issue in your swing or with your ball flight contact issues. But to get to it, click the house icon. You'll see a list of all the courses there that we offer. Scroll down, select that Stop Chunking and Topping course, and get started on the drills. So that way you can start making much, much better contact and start taking some divots and making ball first contact. So John D says, apparently the backspin arising from my driver swing is too high, 4,000 RPMs. I've tried teeing higher and hitting more from the inside and a closed stance. And then that was it. So basically what you need to do is reduce what's called spin loft. So what that means is spin loft is your difference between the angle of attack and the dynamic loft, which is the loft that you're presenting to the golf ball at impact. So angle of attack is the up and down movement of the club head. So if you're hitting up on the ball or down on the ball or level with the golf ball, so this would be a 0 angle of attack. This would be a positive angle of attack. And then this would be a negative angle of attack, right? So the difference between that and the loft, right? The loft that you're presenting to the golf ball. So if you have a lot of shaft lean, that's going to be less loft. And if you kind of have an early release and you add loft, that's going to be more loft, right? So if you have a lot of loft and you're hitting down on the golf ball, So you're hitting down this way and your face is pointing that way. That's going to add a lot more spin. If you close the gap between the angle of attack and the loft of the club, so let's say you're hitting up on the golf ball 5 degrees, and you're hitting and you have 10 degrees of loft on your club, while your spin loft, the difference there, right, positive 5 degrees up and positive 10 degrees of loft, the spin loft there is 5 degrees. That's going to be low spin, right? High spin would be, let's say you're hitting down on the ball 5 degrees, and let's say you're hitting it with loft of 20 degrees. Well, that'd be 25 degrees of spin loft. That'd be a lot more spin. So that's what you need to do. You need to reduce that. So you need to hit up on the golf ball more with less loft. Up on the ball with less loft. Now, some things that you may have done there, which are teeing the ball higher and hitting more from the inside with the closed stance, those are all things to help you to hit more up on the golf ball. But if you just take your spin loft, right? So let's say you were hitting 5 degrees down, right? And you had a dynamic loft of 20 degrees. So that would mean your spin loft is 25 degrees. Well, if you just go from hitting 5 degrees down to hitting 5 degrees up, and you don't change the loft, right? You just keep the same spin loft, you're going to have the same amount of spin. You're just going to hit the ball higher now, right? So you need to close the gap between that. So what I would look at is your release of the club. You need to get your hands more in front of the ball at impact. So play the ball more forward, get a wider stance, swing more from the inside. Those are all ways to help you to hit more up on the golf ball, but you need to work on getting that. It's almost like if you're hitting a ping pong forehand, right? You want to have this kind of feeling through impact. So my hands moving up with the face of the paddle kind of angling down. That'd be kind of a top spin shot. You can't put top spin on a golf ball, but that's the feeling that you want to have when you're hitting it. So that's what you want to feel like as you're coming through contact, is that you have lots of upward angle of attack on the golf ball, but you want to feel like your hands are more forward of the golf ball and that's de-lofting the face. And that's going to be more of the release of the club. So you may want to work on your straight line release and getting that club to release more out in front, so that way you can de-loft it a little bit more. You may need to work on your lag. If you're casting the club right away in the start of the downswing, you're all but guaranteed to add that loft at impact. So those would be some things I'd be looking at, some lag and the straight line release course to help you to lower that dynamic loft at impact, that loft that you're presenting to the golf ball. So to get to either one, I would look at your swing and see what's going on there. If you have some great lag and you just come through and you release it early, then you may just need to work on the straight line release course, right? If you don't have any lag and you're casting this club from the very beginning, this angle between your lead arm and the shaft from the top of the swing gets bigger right away, then I would recommend working on getting some lag initially, and then eventually getting to where you can get some get that club to release better out in front. So to get to either one of those courses, like I said, look at your swing on video, see what's going on there. To get to either one of those courses, click the instruction tab at the top. That will take you to, or click the instruction tab and that'll expand the menu. Then click the Top Speed Golf System. Then click either to the Top Speed Lag or the straight line release course. I know it can be difficult to look at these things on video if you've never looked at video before. And if you'd like to work with an instructor to help you get to where you want to go and lower that spin on your driver, then I'd highly recommend doing unlimited swing reviews. I don't think I have any spots available right now, but if you want to go check it out, click the Get a Review link at the top of the page there. That will take you to the home page, or that will take you to the swing review page. You kind of see what the swing reviews are all about and see if it's something that you'd like to do. And if you scroll down to the bottom of that swing review page, you'll see a list of the instructors there. If you see a spot available, you see a instructor you want to work with and a spot available, go ahead and grab one. If not, make sure you join the waiting list, so that way you can get an email whenever spots open up and you can sign up at that time. The way the waiting list works is if you sign up for that waiting list, you basically get on an email list that gets emailed first whenever spots open up. Now, typically when I open up spots, I'll open up, 10 to 15 spots or something like that. And it's first come, first serve to those who are on the waiting list. And I can't remember the last time I haven't sold out to the waiting list. So if you are interested at all now or in the future, make sure that you join that waiting list, because otherwise you may never get notified whenever spots open up. Once we sell out the spots, we don't send out emails to everybody. So make sure you join that waiting list so that way you can be notified whenever spots open up in the future. So Gene L says, should there be a landing zone on a chip shot like on a pitch shot? Absolutely. That's really getting a good sense for where your landing spots are is how you really become a good chipper or a pitcher of the golf ball. I would say it's your landing spot is more important for chipping than it is for pitching, because typically for pitching, your landing spot is going to be fairly close to the hole because you're hitting it with spin, right? So you're going to have it's not going to roll out as much. Whereas with a chip shot's going to carry a certain amount, and then it's going to roll the whole way. If you don't have a landing spot, then it's going to be very difficult to judge how far you need to go. So yes, landing zone is very important. I personally like chipping with my pitching wedge the most, because that landing spot is typically going to be about 50% of the way to the hole. Typically. Now, obviously, that's not exact depending on certain conditions, right? If it's an uphill chip, you're going to have to land it further. If it's a downhill chip, you're going to need to land it closer because it's going to roll out more. If it's firmer conditions, it's typically going to roll out more. If the greens are really fast, they're going to roll out more. And vice versa. If it's really soft, wet, slow conditions, it's not going to roll out as much. So it's not an exact science, but typically, generally, that pitching wedge is going to you're going to carry it about halfway to the hole. That's why I really like the chip with the pitching wedge, because it's much easier for me to find that landing spot where I need to land it, because it's typically about halfway to the hole, and then you can make an adjustment based on your conditions. So that's what I typically recommend chipping with, because I just think it's the easiest. I think it's the easiest way. So give that a try. But yeah, absolutely, landing zone for chip shots is vital for sure. We actually have some drills in the chipping mastery course, which is included with your membership, to help you get better at finding your landing zones. It's the jump rope drill. It's a drill where basically you kind of you don't have to take a jump rope. You can take alignment sticks. You can take anything, but basically you can take some clubs and you can place them on the green, and put them about 3 or 4 feet apart, and then you practice landing your chips between these jump ropes and these jump ropes and these jump ropes, and you kind of vary that to get really good at hitting it on your landing spot. So if you want to check that out, go to the Chipping Mastery course by selecting the house icon, scrolling down on the homepage there. Again, 20 plus courses there included with your membership. Chipping Mastery is one of those courses. It's a series of drills that helps you with your chipping, with the technique, teaches you the proper technique, also teaches you some great drills like the jump rope drill, so that way you can really dial it in and get up and down every single time. So if you want to check that out, like I said, click the house icon, go to the homepage, scroll down the homepage, click the Chipping Mastery course, and see all the drills there. Select that jump rope drill if you want to work on getting that landing spot correct. So Chris H says, "Hi Q, regarding putting alignment, is putting a line on your ball a good idea to align your putter with the ball and the direction you want to start the ball? Are there any tips you can provide or you can give for lining up your ball, the target, while putting?" It's really personal preference. You're going to look on tour and you're going to see lots of great putters using the line on the ball, and you're going to see lots of great putters not using the line on the ball. It's honestly a personal preference. I fooled around with both. For me, using the line on the ball only makes sense for me when I don't have a good feel for my putting, for my alignment with my putting and the direction the ball is starting. So if I'm not playing very much and I'm not really practicing my putting at all, and I don't have a lot of confidence or feel for my line and my speed and things like that, I'll use the line on the ball. I'll put the line on the ball. I'll set it down. I'll read the putt, right? And then I'll set the ball down, and I will try to line it up the best I can with what I believe the start line is. Then I'll actually get behind it, and I'll hold my putter straight up and down like this, and I'll put it on the line on the ball, kind of line it up like this, where I'll get down on the ground, and you'll see I'll kind of line it up like this and make sure that it's lined up with where I want to go. And then I'll kind of make an adjustment from there. And once I get there, I can get up over the ball, and I can be confident that I'm lined up with where I want to go. And then the key here, when you put this is the drawback of putting the line on the ball. There's a couple pros and cons to it. The pro is that it helps you to line up, give you confidence for how you're lining up, which is nice. That's a big benefit. That's really the main benefit of it. The cons is that I'm not a huge fan of it in the sense that I'm almost on board with making it illegal. I think that they should actually make it illegal because it really slows down play. If you're sitting there, imagine everyone in your group used the line on the ball, and you're all just sitting there trying to line that up perfectly. I mean, if you've ever watched Bryson putt, I mean, he takes forever, and we're not playing for millions of dollars like they are. Right, we're just out there, playing for fun. So I'm not a fan of it. I wish it wasn't a thing, to be honest. But I can understand the merit of it, and it helps me play better when I don't have confidence in my putting and my line on it. But when I will tell you that another con of it is that you really get fixated on that line, and putting is hitting the ball on the right line with the right speed. That's really what putting is all about. So, excuse me. So if you really get fixated on that line and just worried about that line, then you can kind of lose your focus on the speed, which is, one of the most important things in putting. So you got to make sure that when you're using the line, that you don't get too fixated on it, and you make sure that you stay focused on on hitting the ball with the right speed and the right line. Another good thing about having that line on the ball, excuse me. Another good thing about having that line on the ball is it can give you some feedback on whether you're hitting your putt solid or not. If that line is rolling over top of each other and you're seeing it's just staying on that, it's staying straight, well, then that's a good indication that you're hitting the ball solidly with a good stroke. You're hitting it on the line that you're seeing. If that ball is wobbly and moving all over the place, that's an indication that you're not hitting the putt solidly. Maybe you're cutting across it and things like that. So it can also give you some feedback to let you know, okay, are you rolling it pretty well or not? So those are basically the pros of it. That it can give you some confidence. It can help you to see kind of what the line is. And it can help you, to see or get you lined up to the ball on the right line. And it can also give you some feedback. The cons is that it really slows down play. You can get fixated on that line and forget about the speed. And that's really it. So it's really personal preference. I don't like to use it because, like I said, it slows down play. When I practice my putting, I practice my putting regularly. I find that I actually do better without the line because I have a really good feel for my speed, and without the line, I can really just kind of see the putt really well, just fine. But when I'm not playing a lot and I'm not practicing my putting at all, it is helpful to put that line on there. So, but I prefer not to use it. I haven't used it in a while. I used it for a little while when I got really far off. But once I started practicing my putting again, I actually got better when I took the line off there. But again, it's personal preference. You just got to play around with it. But honestly, I would say if you can stand not to use it, then I wouldn't, because I think it slows down play. And it honestly annoys me when I play with people that use it because of that reason, because it slows down play. And I could see people getting annoyed with me if I use it, right? So I prefer not to use it. But again, it's personal preference. So Richard J says, could you explain how to counterbalance properly in the golf swing? You're talking about putting a counterbalance in your grip. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. Counterbalance is basically a weight that you can put in the weight of or in the end of the grip. I'm not a big fan of it. To me, it takes the feel out of the club head. So basically, your club has a swing weight, right? And it's basically kind of what the balance point of the club is. If you get that swing weight moving too far this way, it makes this club head feel too light, and it's hard. It's almost like you're swinging. It's almost like if you were to take this club around like this and to swing it that way, right? Because you're putting all the weight in your hand this way, and then this feels really light, and it's a lot harder to control something that's super light. And obviously, if it's too heavy, then it's hard to control too. So you want to find that happy balance. And they've pretty much made clubs. They know what they're doing when they make the clubs with the swing weight. They kind of found that balance point of feel, having this heavy enough to where you can feel it, but not so heavy that you can't control it. Right. So I'm not a big fan of having the weight, the counterbalance in here. For myself, again, that's personal preference, because it really makes this feel light, and I cannot feel it and control it as well. So I don't know exactly what your question is, but that's what counterbalance is. It's probably more popular in putting than it is in actual, full swing golf clubs. And again, I'm not a big fan of it with the putting. It puts more weight in your hands. It makes things really, really heavy, and you lose the feel of the putter head, which makes it difficult to control your speed and things like that. So again, it's personal preference. I do not prefer it. There are some people out there that do use it and putt really well with it. I've fooled around with it. I've had counterbalance putters, and I was never a fan of them. My speed control suffered. They have to make the head extremely heavy to be able to feel it, and then that makes the overall putter very heavy. And I just don't like a super heavy putter. I like it to be a really, really heavy putter is really hard to get started for me. So I prefer to have a little bit lighter overall putter, less weight in the handle, normal amount of weight in the kind of like a standard amount of weight. I'm not sure how much I play a Spider Tour putter. I'm not sure how much the head weighs. It's probably somewhere in the 300s, I would imagine, grams wise. But to me, it's a really good weight. It's a really, really good weight for me. It's part of the reason this was my putter before that. This putter here, it's too heavy for me. The head weight on this is 355. To me, that's just a little bit too heavy. My Spider, I'm guessing, is around 300, or maybe it's probably around 300. I would imagine, which is a good weight for me. So to me, this is just too heavy. It's hard for me to get the putter started. To me, again, these are personal preference type things. So there's lots of different ways to do it. Everyone's feel is different, right? So you have to find what works best for you. Donald L says thanks. I'm not sure if he was saying thanks or thinks, but if you're saying thanks, Donald, no problem. Glad I could help. So Raymond W says, I know you were supposed to start the downswing with the lower body. Does that mean that the upper body follows a plot second later, or does the upper body actually go at the same time? I would think of it more like a gear system, right? So you're starting your lower body is the gear that you're putting the force into, right? That you're starting things with, and then that gear, right, gets this gear going, and that gear gets that gear going. So it's a split second, right? But it's like I said, it's a split second that's leading the gear. It's like a gear system that's being powered. The gear that's being powered is the lower body gear, right? And then that gets the hips, the gear of the hips going, and that gets the gears of the chest going, and that gets the gears of the arms and the hands and the club going in that order. If you start from up here and you power from up here, you're typically not going to use your lower body. Your body's not going to open up. You're going to throw all arms and release the club early. Now you can absolutely hit functional golf shots doing that, but you're going to have a hard time being consistent because of the dynamics of the way the club's going to be coming in, right? That early release of the club is going to cause you to hit a lot of thin shots. You're going to add loft, right? Because you're releasing the club early. That's going to add loft, which is going to make the ball, you're not going to transfer as much energy to the golf ball. That's why you don't see any tour players doing it, right? You're typically going to struggle with chunks as well, because if you're throwing your upper body, you're typically going to be hanging back a little bit. The club's going to be bottoming out too soon. Thin shots, chunk shots, loss of power, less forward shaft lean, things like that. So that's why you don't see tour players doing that. You can be functional. You can hit a straight golf shot. All you need to hit a straight golf shot is you need the ball in the center of the face with a square club face with a path that is on plane, right? And you need to make ball first contact. That's all you need to hit a solid golf shot, to hit a functional golf shot. You can do that just by throwing the arms at it, but that's not what the better players do. The better players start with their lower body, get the body opening up so that they can get their hands in front. So that way they can get their ball first contact. That way they can get more shaft lean and have more control of the club head, have more club head stability. So Dean A says, what should the full finish look like? Feet, hips, shoulders, hands, and club. Is there any difference between look and feel? Well, feel is relative. So what you feel and what's actually happening may be two completely different things. And what you feel and what I feel and what Clay feels and what Bryson DeChambeau and Tiger Woods feels, again, these are all different things. So feel is relative. But as far as looks are concerned, typically when you look at the better tour players, what you're going to see is their hips are going to be pointing basically right at the target, maybe a little bit left of the target, right? You're going to see their shoulders or their chest is pointing left of the target. And a lot of times you see their shoulders are basically pointing way left of the target. And what you're typically going to see is that the hands are going to be at about ear level with the club kind of going through the ears. That's typically what you're going to see. But again, you can see different things, right? If you look at someone like a Tommy Fleetwood finishes up here, right? He doesn't bring it all the way around here. He finishes with his hands really, really high like this. That's completely fine, right? You're going to see some different finishes. You also may not be flexible enough to get, I can tell you right now, my finish position does not look like Adam Scott because I'm not as flexible as Adam Scott. Adam Scott's shoulders are pointed 90 degrees left of the target. I'm not flexible enough. That's about as good as I can do. My shoulders are pointed, 45 degrees left of the target. So you can only do it with what you're flexible or capable of. But when you look at the best players, typically hips are pointed toward the target, chest left of the target, shoulders left of that, hands about ear level with the club going through the ears. That's typically what you're going to see. Is we're just talking like a general, a general finish position. Richard J says, how do you counterbalance your body during your pivot? Richard, I don't know what you're asking. Counterbalance your body. Richard, can you ask your question in a different way? I just don't know what you mean by counterbalance your body during your pivot. Louis V says, what outdoor golf mat to stand on would you recommend? The Country Club Elite, those are the ones that are pretty good. Clay has one. I believe it's for outdoor use. So that's what I would recommend, Country Club Elite. I haven't used many other ones or know what brands are the ones that I've used, but those are pretty good, I think. Richard H says, Phil M does not use lines for putting outside of 10 feet. Thanks for sharing, Richard. So Lawrence B says, two people standing next to each other, facing away, shoulder to shoulder. hold on, two people standing next to each other, facing away, shoulder to shoulder. As a golfer comes not to the ball, both people bump hips, but bend outward, so shoulders may be away from each other. Is this maintaining posture to stay in the shot? What? Two people standing next to each other, facing away, shoulder to shoulder, facing away from each other, shoulder to shoulder. As a golfer comes not the ball, both people bump hips, bend outward. Lawrence, I don't know what you're saying. Hi, Q. Difficult question to answer maybe without seeing my swing. I started the 20-minute distance fix and went from 94 miles per hour to a consistent 102. I have been steady at this for 14 days and wonder whether I have reached my limit due to being a 60-year-old duffer, but I feel I'm getting in my own way on the downswing and there is more speed going to obtain without seeing my swing cue. Any thoughts on this, please? So, if you've gone from 94 to 102 miles per hour, that's awesome. That's really, really good. The first 8 to 10 miles per hour are the easiest to get. I get this question all the time, Mick. People ask me, hey, I gained 10 miles per hour and I haven't gained any since. Or I gained 8 miles per hour, I haven't gained any since. Those first 8 to 10 miles per hour are the easiest to get. Every one of the mile per hour after that, it's going to take some work. So, without seeing your swing, I can tell you that if you keep working at the drills and you keep swinging with 100% effort during the neural adaptation part of it, your speed will go up, right? So just to tell you about myself, I've done the speed training. I started out at about 110 miles per hour, right, and went through the 3-week program, and I got up to where my 100% effort, as fast as I possibly could, swing speed was 123 miles per hour. That's all out, everything I got. My playing speed was about 117, 118. Well, over the course of the next 6 months, I kept working, and 3 weeks later, I got up to 124 miles per hour. And then another 3 or 4 weeks after that, I got up to 125 miles per hour, right? So that first 3 weeks, I went from 110 to 123, but it took me another 3 or 4 weeks to get every mile per hour after that, basically doing the same kind of training. And eventually I got to where my max speed, the most I ever got, was 129 miles per hour 6 months later. So it took me, about 6 months to get 6 more miles per hour. And that's with training the same intensity and things like that. So that first 8 miles per hour is the first 8 to 10. That's the easiest. Every mile per hour after that, it's going to take some work. So what's happening to you is completely normal. You just got to keep pushing it and keep getting out of your comfort zone, swinging with 100% effort, right? To keep getting those, to keep getting the speed back, or keep getting the speed going. So you're on the right track. It sounds like you just got to keep working at it. So Louis V says, with hybrid and irons, should the ball make contact on the low or high side of the face? So with an iron, it's going to be on the lower part of the face. It's typically where you're going to see, a few. So if you look at, this is my wedge from college, you can kind of see the wear spots. There's a little bit of wear spots there. So you can see that that's the middle of those wear spots is 1, 2, 3. It's basically between the 4th and 5th groove is where you're seeing those low spots. Or you can see that that's not in the middle. The middle of the face is about right there. You can see the wear spot on the wedge here is right there. So that's about where it's going to be on a wedge. If you want to get a good idea of this, or not on a wedge, but on an iron, if you want to go get a good idea of this, search Tiger Woods wear spot on Google. Just go to Google and search Tiger Woods wear spot, and you'll see where his wear spot is on his irons. It's about the same. I think it's an 8 iron, and you can see it's about between the 4th, 5th, 3rd, somewhere in there. That's the groove. Now, in a hybrid, excuse me, the hybrid club is a much shallower face. A hybrid club face is not that high. It's not as high as an iron is. So it's going to be more in the middle of the face with a hybrid versus a wedge or an iron or something like that. But on a wedge or an iron, it's going to be on the lower part of the face, typically where that sweet spot's going to be. So Lawrence B says, you are standing behind them and they are looking down a fairway that is in front of them. What? I don't understand what you're trying to ask, Lawrence. Both the players bend sideways from the hips. They bump the hips and shoulders, move away, allowing you to see between their shoulders and allowing you. I would have to see what you're talking about, Lawrence. I can't picture what you're saying. I'd have to see it. Sorry, Lawrence. If you got another way to phrase your question about posture, I'll be happy to answer it. But this whole thing about two guys facing each other and bumping the hips, and I'm not going to be able to reasonably understand what you're asking. So Mick S says, thanks, you much appreciated, no problem. Timothy S says, is the push from the lead leg more of a straight up force, or is the push slightly backwards motion from the ball push? So from the lead leg, you want to be pushing down and out away from you. If you just push straight, if you were to just push straight up, your hip would just go up like this, right? So the hips, if I were just to push straight down the ground, my hips would do that, right? I would just extend my legs and my hips would just go straight up in the air. If I want my hips to rotate open, I have to push down and out away from me to push my hip back out of the way. So what that would mean is, what I would try to do is imagine you're standing on a clock, right? I'm standing on a clock, and this would be 12 o'clock on the clock, and back behind me would be 6 o'clock. This would be 3 o'clock. That would be 9 o'clock. I want to imagine that I'm pushing down into the ground and out away from me toward 10:30 on the clock for a right-handed golfer, toward 10:30 on the clock. And that's going to help me to push the hip back out of the way. So it's a force that's down into the ground, but it's also kind of a shear force, kind of like that, right? That's pushing my hip back out of the way. So if you just push straight down the ground, my hip's just going to go up. If I want it to rotate out of the way, I need to push out away from me as well to make that happen. Lawrence B said, another way to say it, can you just ask me a different question about posture? I don't understand. I'm not going to be able to picture what you're trying to tell me here. Stand facing away, a wall is a few inches from your face. Bend to the right and your hip, the move to the left, right shoulder move, right. Lawrence, I'm not going to be able to understand what you're asking. Gary P says, are grooves on 3-wood as important as irons as far as wear and tear? No, they're not going to be grooves on fairway woods. A lot of fairway woods don't even have grooves at all. Typically, they don't even have grooves where you're striking the ball. Most fairway woods don't. So I would say no, they're not as important. The purpose of grooves on your club is to displace moisture, so that way you can get spin and things like that. Typically, with a fairway wood, you're not going to be getting a lot of spin, so there's no there's not a lot of, you're not looking to get a lot of spin, right? So there's not typically going to be grooves there. But with a wedge, you want spin, so you have the grooves on the wedge to displace dirt and moisture and things like that. So that way the club or the ball can make contact with the face. If you have that, if you don't, let's imagine you had a grooveless wedge, right? If you had a lot of dirt and grass and water on there, which you will if you hit the, if you're getting into the grass, right, then it's going to get on the face and then the ball is going to kind of slip on the face and you're not going to get that spin. So not as important. The grooves are not as important on your lower lofted clubs because there's not going to be a lot of spin going on with those anyway. There's much more important with wedges and things like that because you're trying to get spin on those clubs. So Jason J says, I have been training with the Super Speed golf system and been seeing some improvements. But my real issue is translating the speeds I see with my Super Speed clubs and even my driver without a ball to a real shot of any kind with a golf ball involved. I have the standard blue and gray swing speed radar. I can routinely swing between 108 and 112 without a ball with a regular driver, and then it cuts off there. So typically your swing speed with a ball and without a ball are going to be different. Most people can swing a club faster without a ball than they can with the golf ball. That's completely normal. But if you get your club head speed without the ball to go up, your club head speed with the ball will go up as well. So let's say you started out and with a golf ball, you could swing 100 miles per hour without the golf ball. But with the golf ball there, it was 95 miles per hour. Well, let's say you get up to where it's 108, 112 without the golf ball. Well, your club head speed with the golf ball is going to go up along with it, right? So it's normal to have your speed without the ball be the same, or sorry, to be different. It's completely normal, but keep getting that to go up. And as you get that to go up, so is your speed. It's not going to be the same, but it's going to go up, right? It's going to go up with it. We talked about this in the 20-minute distance fix. It's called your 100% effort swing speed versus your play swing speed, right? When you're swinging the super speed stick, right, you don't have to square up the face, right? You don't have to swing it on plane. You can just swing it as hard as you possibly can. But when you get the club in your hand, you're hitting a golf ball, you have to get that, you have to get that club face squared up. You have to get that club on plane to hit a functional golf shot, right? And that can slow you down a little bit. So it's completely normal to have that. But if you get the whole point of the super speed system is really the neural adaptation part of it. So if you keep swinging with 100% effort and getting your body adapting to swinging hard, it's going to become your new normal, and that's going to translate into your speed with the ball there as well. So George H says, what is the difference between a full and a 70-yard wedge swing? How many different clubs do you use with different distance wedges? So really, it's about the amount of energy that you're transferring to the golf ball. So there's lots of ways to transfer different amounts of energy to the golf ball, right? So if you're taking your full, I don't know what your full swing wedge is, but let's say that it's a 56-degree wedge and it's a full swing is 100 yards, right? Well, if you're trying to hit a 70-yard shot, you need to hit less than your full swing, right? Your full swing is basically your maximum energy. So you need to somehow transfer less energy to the golf ball. And that's typically done with the amount of speed, the club head speed that you're going to be providing to the ball, right, with the club. So let's say that your 100, I don't know exactly what the number would be, but let's say your 100-yard swing is 80 miles per hour. Well, you need to swing less than 80 miles per hour to get it to go a less distance. Maybe you need to swing 70 miles per hour to get it to go 70 yards. So that can be done by choking up on the club, right? You can find the amount that you would need to choke up on the club to provide the amount of club head speed. When you choke up on the club, it reduces the amount of speed because the arm, basically the longer the club, typically the faster you're going to be able to swing it. That's why you swing your driver faster than what you swing your wedge, because it's quite a bit longer, right? Here's a wedge. Here's a driver. You can see it's about a foot longer. This, I probably swing somewhere in the neighborhood in the 80s, I would guess. I'm not sure exactly how fast I swing it. This, I swing somewhere, around 120 miles per hour, right? So big difference there because of the length of the club. So that would be one way, be choking up on the club. You're effectively making the club shorter and you're taking a little bit off of it, right? Typically, I find if I choke up about an inch on the club and I swing with the same amount of effort, it takes about 10 yards off, right? So it's probably not going to take you from 100 to 70, but that would be one thing that you can do. The main thing you would do is you would shorten the swing, right? So if this is a full swing, right, that would produce an 80 mile per hour swing, right? Maybe I would take kind of a 3/4 swing where my lead arm's about parallel, maybe that would take me down to like a 70-mile-per-hour swing and take me down to the distance that I would need to be. So really, it comes down to learning the skill of being able to control that. And a good way to do that would be just to go to the driving range and try to hit shots of different distances. I typically, for me, 100 yards to 40, 50 yards, I'm using my 54 degree. That's what I'm using for that distance. And I have a good feel for how hard I need to hit the golf ball to get it there. And that came from practice, from basically going to the range and trying to hit the ball in 10-yard increments. One way that you can do it is you can place towels on the ground every 10 yards and try to hit to the different towels and randomize it. Hopefully your range has things out there that you can kind of hit to or short of or long of, and kind of dial that in. The PRGR, you can use that and set it up behind you and try to hit it different distances and have it tell you how far you're hitting it and controlling the speed with that. So that's basically what it comes down to. Another way that you can do it is with what we call a clock system. So the clock system is where you imagine your lead arm is a hand on the clock. So this would be 7:30 position. This would be a 9 o'clock position, and that would be a 10:30 position. So you would figure out how far you hit it, a 10:30 swing, a 9 o'clock swing, and a 7:30 swing. You'd figure out how far you hit it. And let's say that your 9 o'clock swing with your 56 degree, let's say that went 80 yards and you had a 75-yard shot. Well, what you would need to do to dial that down a little bit, you can either kind of choke up on the club a little bit, or you can swing a little bit less than that 9 o'clock swing to take a little bit off of it. So that's another way to do it. But again, it's a skill that has to be learned. And typically I would use one club for kind of that distance range and get a good feel for what you need to do with that one club. All right, so Frederick D says 1.3, how shallow your downswing for your pure contact tennis racket drill? I'm confused about the drill shallowing your club for contact. Clay states that you should be rotating your left hand like you are opening a doorknob to the right, but during the downswing, he is rotating his left hand to the left. So what you're doing, the wrist movements, you have wrist rotation, and then you have the wrist movements like this. So this is the turning the doorknob to the right, and then this is the squaring of the face. So this is the shallowing of the club, and then this is the squaring of the face. So that's what you're doing. With the tennis racket, right? When you look at the strings here, the strings point up to the sky, and then as they're pointing up to the sky, they're also pointing out away from you, right? So I'm getting the butt end of this tennis racket to be more parallel to the ground, and then I'm twisting this handle like this to square up the face. So if I shallow it, right, and I square up the face, then I can stay in my posture and come into impact with forward shaft lean and a square club face. What a lot of people do is they have this club steep, right, and the face is open. So I'm coming down, and now if I continue like this, I'm going to swing way over the top with an open face. I'm going to hit a huge slice. So what do most people do to compensate for that? They get right here, and they're going to stand up. When you stand up, that gets this club now to go to the inside, so that way I'm not swinging way over the top. And then I'm going to flip to square up the face. When I come in, I'm going to flip like this to square up the face. And you can hit functional golf shots, but you're just not going to be very consistent, and you're going to add a lot off. You're not going to have a lot of energy being transferred to the golf ball. So that's what the move is. It's getting the club shallowed out, so that way you can open up your body, right? And swing this club from the inside, and it's getting the face squared up, so that way you don't have to flip it later on to square it. You can stay in your posture, get the hands in front. So Al N says, would you review setup with a 5-iron versus a 3 hybrid? There really isn't any difference there. You would set up the exact same with both of them. You can maybe play the 3 hybrid slightly more forward in the stance, but honestly, I would just set up the exact same way with both of them. Jason J says, I'm 92 with the ball though. Yeah. So as your speed with the club goes up, so will or speed with the super speed things goes up, so will it with the ball. Last question here, Gary P says, I regularly hit my driver skied or on the hill or on the heel. Skied or skied. Okay. Are these swing faults related? Is there a common fix? So it's hard to say without seeing your swing, but it sounds like you're probably, I would say they're somewhat related, because the only difference is that one, the club is higher, and one, the club is lower, right? So the one where you're skying the ball, you're lower, and when you're hitting off the heel, the club is higher. So what I would try to do is I would try to hit it low on the toe. That's what I would try to do. Without seeing your swing, it's hard. It's impossible for me to know the technical reason why you're doing that. But what I would try to do is that right now you're trying to hit the ball in the center of the face, and you're hitting it high and on the face and toward the heel. So what I would adjust your feel to is low on the face and on the toe. I'd almost try to feel like you're topping it, right, and on the toe, and that will more than likely move the strike closer to the center of the face. Now, if you actually hit it low and on the toe, that's great. That means that you've made an adjustment. You've been able to change that. And what you need to do now is ease off of that feeling. If you still hit it high in the heel, you need to exaggerate it even more. You need to get out of your comfort zone. You may even need to feel like you're missing the golf ball completely. I know that may be difficult to do, but you just have to. You got to get out of your comfort zone to try it. This isn't something I would say go to the course and do it. Go to the range and try to work this out on the range, so that way you can get comfortable with it. Because if you just go to the course, it's going to be very difficult to try to get out of your comfort zone to do that. So that's what I would recommend doing. So thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to y'all next time.